Dominique had been elbow-deep in an air filtration unit for the better part of an hour when the door behind her decided to have opinions about her existence. She didn't hear it open. Not at first. The hum of the ventilation system and the clatter of her tools against metal drowned out most ambient noise. But when the sudden rush of cold air hit the back of her neck, she froze, wrench still halfway through loosening a stubborn bolt. Nobody was supposed to be in this corridor. Maintenance wing, Section 12, Sublevel 4. The kind of place where the only visitors were technicians like her, and the occasional lost janitor bot spinning in confused circles. She turned around slowly, half expecting to see Pollux, the station's perpetually anxious security officer, hovering nearby with that mandible-clicking thing he did when he was nervous. Instead, she saw nothing. Just an empty hallway and a door that was very much open when it absolutely should not have been. The door in question was marked with 3 parallel red lines: restricted access, high-level personnel only. The kind of door that didn't budge unless you had the right genetic signature, the right clearance codes, and probably a signed permission slip from the station commander himself. Dominique blinked at it. The door blinked back. Well, metaphorically. Its indicator light had switched from red to green, like it was pleased with itself. "Okay," she muttered, setting down her wrench. "That's new." She approached the doorway cautiously, peering through into the corridor beyond. Emergency lighting cast everything in a pale blue glow. Nothing sinister. Nothing alive. Just another hallway leading deeper into the restricted zones of Helix Point, the massive orbital station that served as a hub for half the known galaxy's traffic. Maybe the door had malfunctioned. Systems glitched all the time on a station this old. Hell, she'd spent the last month fixing things that broke for no good reason. Doors were just machines. Machines broke. She reached out to press the manual close button. The door slid shut before her finger made contact. Dominique snatched her hand back like she'd touched a hot surface. "Okay, nope, not dealing with haunted doors today." She grabbed her toolbox, packed up her equipment with the kind of speed that suggested she had somewhere very important to be, anywhere that wasn't here, and headed back toward the main maintenance bay. The corridor felt longer than usual. Her footsteps echoed too loudly. And when she passed another restricted access door, the one leading to the upper engineering decks, it opened too. Just opened. Smoothly. Politely. Like it had been waiting for her. Dominique didn't stop walking. She picked up her pace, actually, because that was 2 doors now, and 2 doors meant a pattern, and patterns meant something was deeply, fundamentally wrong. By the time she reached the main maintenance bay, she was practically jogging. She burst through the entrance. This door she had to open manually, thank God, and nearly collided with Pollux himself. The Uxkoth security officer stumbled backward, his forearms flailing in surprise. His compound eyes refracted the overhead lights into 1,000 tiny rainbows. "Maintenance Tech Dominique! You startled me." "Yeah, sorry, She paused, catching her breath. "Hey, have you noticed anything weird with the doors in Section 12? Pollux's antennae twitched. On an Uxkoth, that was like a human raising an eyebrow. "Weird? In what manner?" "Opening when they shouldn't. Like restricted doors. I was just working down there and 2 of them opened for no reason." His antennae stopped twitching. In fact, they went very, very still. Pollux had several tells when he was nervous. The mandible clicking, the antennae thing, the way his exoskeleton seemed to pale from deep blue to something closer to sky blue. And right now, he was doing all 3 at once. "You were near restricted doors." "Yeah, I mean, I was fixing the air filters nearby, but I didn't, and they opened. Yes. For you. Well, I don't know if they opened for me specifically. They might have just... Pollux pulled out a handheld scanner, the kind security used to verify identities and clearance levels. His hands, all four of them, were shaking slightly as he pointed it at her. The device beeped. Then it beeped again. Then it made a sound Dominique had never heard before, a sort of ascending whistle that suggested it was very confused about something. Pollux stared at the readout. His antennae went completely flat against his head. This cannot be accurate. What can't be accurate? He turned the scanner around so she could see the screen. Most of it was the usual information: her name, her biometric signature, her employment status as a maintenance technician with Level 2 clearance. Standard stuff. But at the bottom of the display, in text that seemed to pulse slightly, was a line that read, "Multilevel security. Auto access granted." Dominique squinted at it. What does that mean? I do not know. Pollux's voice had gone up an octave. I have never seen this designation. Auto access should not. It is not a classification that exists in our security protocols. So, it's a glitch? Perhaps. Yes. Most likely. He didn't sound convinced. I will report this to my supervisor. You should continue your duties. Everything is fine. Probably. He scuttled away before she could ask any follow-up questions, moving with the kind of speed that suggested he wanted to be literally anywhere else. Dominique stood in the maintenance bay, toolbox in hand, and tried to make sense of what had just happened. Doors opening, strange security designations, a panicking Uxkoth who looked like he'd seen a ghost. Just another day on Helix Point, apparently. She headed to the locker room to stow her equipment, trying to convince herself it was nothing. But when she approached her personal locker, a simple, unpowered metal box with a mechanical combination lock, the lock clicked open by itself. Her hand froze on the handle. Oh, come on! The next few hours were a masterclass in surreal experiences. Dominique tried to go about her normal routine. She had a list of repair tickets to work through, broken lighting panels in the residential quarter, a malfunctioning food synthesizer in the mess hall, the usual assortment of technical problems that cropped up on a station housing 50,000 beings from 100 different species. But everywhere she went, doors opened. Not just restricted doors, though those were the most alarming. All doors. Security checkpoints that should have required ID verification just let her through. The executive lounge, where high-ranking officials gathered to make important decisions while drinking expensive liquids from across the galaxy, opened its doors like she was an honored guest. She walked past the entrance to the command deck, the nerve center of the entire station, and the outer vestibule doors parted smoothly. She didn't go in. She had some sense of self-preservation. Other crew members started noticing. A group of Luxians, tall, crystalline beings who communicated through light pulses, stopped mid-conversation to watch her pass. A maintenance bot actually backed away from her, which was concerning because bots didn't have survival instincts. They just followed programming. By mid-afternoon, she'd heard the whispers. Two Kree, bird-like aliens with vibrant plumage and an unfortunate tendency to gossip, were perched near a junction point, their translator implants converting their chirps into galactic common. Saw her walk right through the medical research wing. Those doors are restricted to Level 8 personnel and above. I heard the security scanners flagged her as something impossible. Multi-level access. Auto-granted. What does that even mean? No idea, but Pollux looked like he was going to molt from stress. Dominique walked past them, and they fell silent immediately. their head feathers flattening in what might have been respect or fear. Hard to tell with Cree. She made it back to her quarters, a small, functional space with a bed, a desk, and a window that looked out onto the endless black of space, and sat down heavily on the edge of her mattress. This was insane. She was nobody, just a technician. She'd grown up in a colony orphanage on the Outer Rim, learned to fix things because that's what orphans did if they wanted to eat, and eventually worked her way onto Helix Point because the pay was decent, and the station needed people who knew their way around ancient, temperamental machinery. She wasn't special. She didn't have clearance for anything important. She'd never even met Commander Brix in person, and he ran the whole station. Her personal terminal chimed. Incoming message. She pulled up the display, expecting another repair ticket, or maybe a message from her shift supervisor asking where she'd been all afternoon. Instead, she got, "Report to Command Center immediately. Priority 1 summons. Commander Brix X." Dominique stared at the message. "Well," she said to her empty quarters, "that's not ominous at all." She changed into a clean uniform, not because she cared about impressing the commander, but because showing up to a priority summons covered in grease felt like a bad idea, and headed toward the command center. The walk there was an experience. Every door she approached opened before she reached it. Airlocks that normally required manual override codes just cycled for her. Security checkpoints waved her through without scanning her ID. Other crew members stepped aside as she passed, and Dominique couldn't tell if they were being respectful or just didn't want to be near whatever weirdness was following her around. A Moluxian engineer, slug-like, about a meter long, leaving a faint trail of moisture on the floor, actually pressed itself against the wall as she walked by, its eye stalks tracking her movement with what looked like terror. "I'm not contagious," she called over her shoulder. The Moluxian didn't look convinced. By the time she reached the command center entrance, a small crowd had gathered: security personnel, administrative staff, a few curious onlookers who probably should have been working. They all watched as she approached the massive reinforced doors that led to the heart of the station's operations. The doors opened, not slowly, not hesitantly. They slammed open like they'd been waiting their whole mechanical life for this exact moment. The crowd murmured. Someone gasped. A translator implant glitched and spat out what sounded like a curse in 3 different languages simultaneously. Dominique took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and walked through. Inside, Commander Brix was waiting. Commander Brix looked like someone had taken a grizzly bear, taught it to stand upright, given it a military education, and then handed it command of the galaxy's busiest space station. His fur was a deep brown with streaks of silver around the muzzle, and his eyes, small, dark, and sharper than they had any right to be, tracked Dominique's entrance with the focus of a predator sizing up prey. Next to him stood Lix, his second-in-command. The Moluxian was considerably smaller than Brix, their slug-like body coiled on a specialized platform that kept them at a comfortable working height. Their eye stalks swiveled independently, one watching Dominique, the other focused on a holographic display floating nearby. On Brix's other side was Kron, head of station security. The Hyssek was all scales and cold calculation, his reptilian features locked in what might have been concern or constipation. Hard to tell with his species. All 3 of them looked deeply uncomfortable. "Maintenance tech, Dominique," Brix said, his voice a low rumble that resonated in her chest. "Thank you for coming so quickly." "I got the impression it wasn't optional, sir." Brix's mouth twitched. Might have been a smile. "Please, have a seat." She sat in the indicated chair, which was human-sized and therefore felt out of place among the various stations designed for different species. The command center hummed with activity around them. Dozens of officers monitoring communications, traffic control, station systems, but everyone was very carefully not looking at their little meeting. Except they totally were. Sidelong glances, whispered conversations behind hands and appendages. "I imagine you know why you're here," Crone said, his forked tongue flicking out to taste the air. Hisek did that when they were nervous. Something about doors opening and security clearances that shouldn't exist? That is putting it mildly. Crone gestured, and a holographic display materialized between them. It showed her biometric scan, the same one Pollux had taken earlier. "Every security checkpoint you have passed through in the last 6 hours has flagged you with a designation we cannot explain." Dominique leaned forward, studying the display. "Multilevel security. Auto access granted." "Yeah, Pollux showed me. What does it mean?" "We were hoping you could tell us," Lix said, their voice gentle but probing. "Moluxians were known for their diplomatic skills. Have you recently undergone any genetic modifications? Received any upgrades to your citizenship status? Been granted special clearance by any governmental body?" No, and absolutely not. I fix air filters and patch electrical conduits. I'm nobody." Brix growled, not threateningly, just thoughtfully. "That designation suggests otherwise. We've run every diagnostic we can think of. The station's security systems recognize you as having unlimited access to every restricted area on Helix Point." "Which is impossible," Crone added. "Even Commander Brix does not have unlimited access. Some areas require multiple senior officers to authorize entry." "But they open for you," Lix said. "Automatically. Without question." Dominique spread her hands. "I don't know what to tell you. I didn't do anything. I was just replacing filters when this started." Crone produced a handheld scanner, more sophisticated than the one Pollux had used. "May I?" She nodded. He pointed the device at her and activated it. The scanner hummed, then beeped, then made a sound like a computer having an existential crisis. Crone's eyes widened. Well, widened as much as reptilian eyes could. "This, Commander, look at this." Brix leaned over, Lix's eye stalks stretched to see, and all three of them stared at the readout in silence. "What?" Dominique asked. "What does it say?" "It says your clearance level is undefined," Lix said slowly. "Access designation, universal. And the origin code is corrupted. The system cannot determine who granted you this status or when." "Because nobody granted it," Dominique said. "This has to be a bug." "We thought so too," Brix admitted. "But bugs do not override our most secure protocols. Crone, pull up her citizenship file." The Hisek manipulated the holographic interface, and a new display appeared. Dominique's official galactic citizenship record. It was depressingly sparse. Born on Old Earth, parents unknown, raised in the Outpost 12 orphanage on the colony world of... She'd never learned how to pronounce the planet's native name, so everyone just called it Outpost 12. Standard education. Unremarkable employment history. Current position. Maintenance technician. Helix Point Station. "Nothing unusual," Crone muttered. "Wait," Lix said, their eye stalks focusing intently on one corner of the display. "There. Do you see that?" Brix squinted. "See what?" "The data shadow. There's a secondary file linked to her biometric signature." Dominique felt a chill run down her spine. "A secondary file? What does that mean?" "It means," Lix said, manipulating the display to highlight the anomaly, that your official record is only part of the picture. There's another layer of information attached to your identity, but it's encrypted. Kron tried to access it. The holographic display flickered, shifted through several colors, and then displayed a single word in text that seemed to glow with its own internal light. Restricted. Restricted? How? Brix demanded. Kron worked the controls, his claws clicking against the interface. This is... Commander, this is progenitor class encryption. The room went very, very quiet. Even the background hum of activity seemed to fade as every officer in the command center stopped pretending they weren't listening and just openly stared. That's not possible, Brix said flatly. I am looking at it, Kron replied. Progenitor class security. The same encryption used on the ancient systems that form the backbone of this station. Technology that hasn't been created in thousands of years. Dominique's head was spinning. Progenitor? Like the progenitors? The ancient civilization that disappeared? The very same, Lix confirmed. They built most of the galaxy's infrastructure. FTL gates, terraforming networks, deep space stations like this one. Then they vanished without explanation, leaving their technology behind. Nobody has been able to replicate their security protocols. Nobody has progenitor class clearance anymore because there are no progenitors left to grant it. But I have it. Apparently. Brix stood, which made him even more imposing. He began pacing, his heavy footfalls shaking the deck plating slightly. This doesn't make sense. How does a human maintenance technician end up with security clearance from an extinct civilization? Maybe she's descended from them? Lix suggested. A hybrid of some kind? Dominique laughed. Couldn't help it. The sound came out slightly hysterical. That's ridiculous. I'm human. Just regular human. I've had medical scans. Someone would have noticed if I had alien DNA. Progenitor DNA might not register as alien, Kron said thoughtfully. There are theories that the progenitors were humanoid. Some xenoarchaeologists believe they might have been related to several current species, including humans. So what? I'm part ancient superbeing, and nobody mentioned it until now? A new voice cut through the conversation, dry and sardonic. Perhaps because you never tried to access progenitor systems until today. Everyone looked up. The voice came from the station's central AI, Opus, Operational Processing and Utility System. It managed everything from life support to traffic control. And it had a personality subroutine that someone had programmed with what could only be described as withering sarcasm. Opus, Brix said. What do you know about this? More than you, apparently. I have been monitoring maintenance tech Dominique's movements since the first anomaly was reported. Her biometric signature triggered a recognition protocol in my progenitor legacy subsystems. And you didn't think to mention this? Kron hissed. You didn't ask. Also, I was busy processing the implications. This is the first time in 6,322 years that anyone has registered as an inheritor class entity. Dominique stood up. An inheritor class? What now? Entity, Opus repeated patiently. According to my core programming, the parts installed by the progenitors themselves, certain individuals carry genetic markers that identify them as inheritors. My systems are programmed to grant them unlimited access and comply with their requests. Why? The progenitors did not include an explanation in my documentation. Typical of them, really. Very advanced, very mysterious, absolutely terrible at leaving clear instructions. Brix resumed pacing. So you're telling me that this technician has genetic markers from an ancient, vanished civilization, and every progenitor system in the galaxy will just obey her? In essence, yes. That's insane. I don't disagree, Commander, but my programming is quite clear on this matter. Subject Dominique is recognized as an inheritor. All progenitor systems default to compliance. Dominique sat back down. Her legs felt wobbly. This isn't happening. This is a dream. I'm going to wake up in my quarters with a hangover, and none of this will be real. Lix's eye stalks swiveled sympathetically toward her. I'm afraid this is quite real. But I don't want to be an inheritor class whatever. I just want to fix things and get paid, and maybe take a vacation someday. Unfortunately, Opus said, what you want and what you are may not align. Welcome to sentience. It's disappointing for everyone. News traveled fast on Helix Point. By the time Dominique left the command center, after another hour of increasingly frantic questioning that produced exactly 0 useful answers, half the station seemed to know that something unprecedented was happening. Word of her inheritor status spread through the crew like a virus. Organic beings gossiped. AI systems exchanged data packets. Even the cleaning bots seemed to route around her with more caution than usual. She made it back to her quarters and locked the door. Or tried to. The door refused to lock. It just stayed unlocked, as if the concept of keeping her confined somewhere was fundamentally offensive to its programming. Great, she muttered, wedging a chair under the door handle. Privacy is apparently not an inheritor privilege. She collapsed onto her bed and stared at the ceiling, trying to process everything. Progenitors, genetic markers, unlimited access to ancient technology. It was too much. She was a technician. She understood how things worked. Pumps, filters, electrical systems. Those made sense. This did not make sense. Her terminal chimed. She ignored it. It chimed again. And again. By the 5th chime, she dragged herself over and checked the message queue. 32 unread messages. Requests for interviews from station media. Questions from xenoanthropology departments at universities she'd never heard of. One marriage proposal from a Luxian who apparently found power very attractive. And, most alarmingly, 3 formal requests from governmental bodies asking her to submit to voluntary examination and analysis. The last one was from the Luxian Diplomatic Corps. She opened it, skimmed the contents, and felt her stomach drop. They wanted to take her to their homeworld for study. Voluntary, of course, with the understanding that refusing would be seen as an act of political hostility and might result in economic sanctions against Helix Point. Study, she said aloud. Right, because when I think study, I definitely don't think strap her to a table and see what makes her tick. A sharp knock on her door made her jump. Dominique? It's Brix. We need to talk. Now. She moved the chair and opened the door manually. The first time she'd had to actually operate a door mechanism in hours. Brix stood there, looking even more stressed than before. Behind him were Lix, Kron, and 2 security officers she didn't recognize. You need to come with us, Brix said. We have a situation. Another one? I thought I was the situation. You are, but now you're a situation with witnesses. They led her back toward the command center, but diverted into a conference room she didn't even know existed. Inside, the room was packed. Delegates from at least a dozen different species, all talking over each other in a cacophony of languages that the station's translation systems struggled to keep up with. The conversation died the moment Dominique entered. A Luxian in elaborate robes, tall, crystalline, radiating light pulses that her implant translated as barely contained excitement, stepped forward. This is her? The inheritor? Maintenance tech, Dominique, Brix said formally. Yes. The Luxian's light pulses intensified. I am Mox, representative of the Luxian Diplomatic Corps. We have many questions. Get in line, Dominique muttered. Another delegate pushed forward. A Hive Collective representative, insectoid, with compound eyes that caught every movement in the room. I am Buckskill, speaking for the collective. If this human possesses access to progenitor systems, she represents a significant shift in galactic power dynamics. She represents a security risk, hissed a third delegate. This one a species Dominique didn't recognize, quadrupedal, covered in something that looked like moss, with a voice like grinding stone. Mox's light pulses turned sharp, aggressive. The Luxian government formally requests custody of this individual for examination. We have the most advanced xenobiology facilities in the known galaxy. We can determine the extent of her capabilities and— Absolutely not, Brix interrupted. She's a citizen of this station and under my protection. With respect, Commander, you don't have the authority to harbor someone who could potentially access ancient weapons systems, terraforming networks, and FTL gate controls. Mox's tone was polite, but his light pulses betrayed his anger. If she can truly command progenitor technology, she's the most dangerous being in the galaxy. I fix air filters, Dominique shouted. Everyone turned to stare at her. I'm not dangerous. I don't want to command anything. I just want to do my job and be left alone. Buckskill's antennae twitched. Your desires are irrelevant. Access to progenitor systems means access to infrastructure that controls trade, communication, and defense across hundreds of systems. You could shut down entire sectors, redirect shipping lanes, disable planetary shields. Or, the mossy delegate added, activate weapons that have been dormant for millennia. The progenitors built tools of incredible destruction. If you can access those— I don't even know how to access those, Dominique protested. Yet, Mox said quietly. You don't know how yet. But given time, instruction, or the right circumstances, who's to say what you might be capable of? Brix stepped between Dominique and the delegates, his bulk forming a physical barrier. This conversation is over. Dominique is under station jurisdiction. Any attempts to remove her without proper legal authorization will be treated as an act of aggression. Then we will obtain legal authorization, Mox said coldly. The Luxian High Council is already drafting emergency resolutions. We are not alone in this concern. He was right. Around the room, other delegates nodded, clicked, buzzed, or flashed their agreement. They were scared. All of them. Scared of what she represented, scared of what she might become, scared of the power she supposedly possessed. Dominique felt something building in her chest. Not fear, though there was plenty of that. Anger. Hot, bright, and clarifying. You know what? She said, her voice cutting through the murmurs. I'm done with this. She turned and walked out of the conference room before anyone could stop her. Behind her, she heard Brix calling her name, heard the delegates erupting into argument, heard Kron barking orders to his security team. She ignored all of it. Her feet carried her through corridors that opened obediently before her, past startled crew members who pressed themselves against walls, past checkpoints that didn't even bother scanning her anymore. She found herself heading deeper into the station, into sections she'd only seen on maintenance schematics. Old sections, original sections, the parts of Helix Point that had been here since the beginning, built by hands, or appendages, or whatever the progenitors had, thousands of years ago. The corridors changed as she walked, less modern, less maintained. The walls were smoother here, made of material that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The air tasted different, recycled through older systems. And then she found it. A door unlike any she'd seen before. Massive, seamless. No visible controls, no access panel, no indication of how it might open. The surface was covered in symbols that hurt to look at directly, as if they existed in more dimensions than her eyes were equipped to process. She knew what this was. Every maintenance tech on the station knew about it. The progenitor core, the heart of Helix Point's ancient systems, sealed for thousands of years, forbidden to everyone. She reached out and touched the door. It opened, not slowly, not dramatically. It just ceased to be closed. One moment there was a solid barrier, the next there was an entrance into a space that should not have existed. Dominique stepped through. The chamber beyond was enormous. Curved walls rose hundreds of meters overhead, meeting in a dome that seemed to be made of solid starlight. In the center of the room stood a crystalline structure, a pillar of translucent material shot through with veins of light that pulsed in patterns she almost recognized. The progenitor core. She approached it slowly, half expecting alarms, security systems, something to stop her. Nothing did. The chamber was silent except for a low hum that might have been machinery, or might have been the building itself breathing. When she got within a few meters of the pillar, it reacted. Light flared from its depths, and suddenly the chamber wasn't empty anymore. Holographic interfaces bloomed into existence all around her, displays showing star charts, system diagnostics, data streams in languages she couldn't read, but somehow understood the function of. The air filled with information, all of it accessible, all of it waiting for her input. Holy. She didn't finish the sentence. A voice spoke. Not Opus. Something else. Something older and somehow warmer. Inheritor recognized. Welcome. It has been 6,300 years, 21 days, and approximately 4 hours since the last authorized access. Who are you? I am the core, the nexus of progenitor systems within this facility. You may command me as you see fit. Dominique turned in a slow circle, taking in the displays. She saw the station's systems laid bare: life support, power generation, defensive shields, docking controls. She saw connections to other systems, other stations, spreading out across the galaxy like a vast web. She saw infrastructure that controlled FTL gates, communications relays, even planetary defense grids on worlds she'd never visited. All of it accessible. All of it waiting. She swallowed hard. I could control all of this? You possess the authority. Whether you possess the knowledge is a separate question. But yes, all progenitor systems within range recognize your genetic markers. They will comply with your instructions. The implications crashed over her like a wave. Bookskill had been right. She could shut down shipping lanes, disable shields, redirect the flow of galactic civilization just by thinking it. Or she could do the opposite. Open new routes, improve systems, use this ancient technology to help people instead of controlling them. Or, and this was the thought that made her hands shake, she could do nothing. Walk away. Pretend she never found this place. What am I? She asked quietly. Why do I have these genetic markers? The progenitors have been gone for thousands of years. How can I be connected to them? That information is restricted, the core said. However, I can tell you that the Inheritor program was designed with long-term contingencies in mind. You were not an accident. Your existence serves a purpose. What purpose? That information is restricted. Yeah, I got it. Dominique ran her hands through her hair, frustrated. So I have all this power but no idea why or what I'm supposed to do with it. The progenitors believed in choice, the core said. The power is yours. The purpose is for you to determine. Behind her, she heard footsteps, multiple sets, echoing through the corridors. Security team. Probably Kron and his people, tracking her down. She had maybe a minute before they arrived. A minute to decide what to do with the most significant discovery in galactic history. The holographic displays pulsed around her, patient and waiting. Dominique took a deep breath and made her choice. The security team burst into the chamber with weapons drawn, then froze at the threshold like they'd run into an invisible wall. Kron was at the front, his reptilian eyes wide with something that looked suspiciously like awe. Behind him stood Brix, Lix, and what appeared to be half the station's tactical response unit, all of them staring at the holographic displays that filled the chamber, like constellations. "Dominique?" Brix said carefully, his voice the tone you'd use when talking to someone standing on a ledge. "Please, step away from the core." She turned to face them, and the displays shifted with her movement, orienting themselves around her like she was the center of their universe. Which, apparently, she was. "I'm not going to break anything," she said. "That's not what concerns me." Brix took a cautious step forward. "What concerns me is what happens if you decide to use it." "Yeah, well, you're not the only one." She gestured at the displays. "Do you have any idea what I could do right now? I could shut down every FTL gate in the sector. I could lock down entire planets. I could—" She stopped herself, because listing the possibilities only made them more terrifying. Lix slithered forward on their platform, eye stalks swiveling between Dominique and the core. "But you won't, will you?" "No, I won't, because I'm not actually interested in becoming a galactic dictator." Dominique looked back at the crystalline pillar, at the information flowing through it like blood through veins. "But everyone out there thinks I might. Mox wants to dissect me. Buckskill wants to lock me up. That mossy delegate probably wants to throw me out an airlock just to be safe." "They're scared," Brix admitted. "Power like this, it makes people do stupid things. Which is why I'm going to get rid of it." The chamber went very quiet. "Explain," Kron said, his hand still on his weapon. Dominique turned back to the core's interface. The holographic displays responded immediately, shifting to show command protocols and system parameters. "Opus told me the progenitors believed in choice, right? Well, here's my choice. I'm going to reprogram the access protocols." "To do what?" Lix asked. "To stop recognizing genetic markers as the basis for authority." She began manipulating the displays, her hands moving through holographic controls that felt oddly intuitive, like she'd been doing this her whole life. "The whole reason this is a problem is because the system sees my DNA and automatically grants me unlimited access. That's insane. Access should be based on need and ethics, not genetics." The core's voice resonated through the chamber. "Warning. Modifying fundamental access protocols may result in permanent changes to progenitor system behavior across all connected networks." "Good," Dominique said. "That's the point." Brix moved closer, close enough that she could see the concern in his small, dark eyes. "You understand what you're proposing? You're talking about changing infrastructure that spans the entire galaxy. Systems that have operated the same way for thousands of years. Systems that were designed to respond to people who don't exist anymore," Dominique countered. "The progenitors are gone. Their genetic markers don't mean anything now. So we change the rules." She pulled up a command interface and began coding new parameters. The knowledge flowed into her mind from somewhere, maybe the core itself, maybe something in her own DNA that remembered how to do this. She didn't question it. She just worked. Behind her, she could hear more people arriving. Mox's crystalline footsteps, Buckskill's chittering mandibles. The delegates had found her. "Stop her!" Mox's light pulses were nearly blinding with panic. "She's accessing the core. She could compromise everything." "She's fixing everything," Brix growled, positioning himself between the delegates and Dominique. "Let her work." "You don't have the authority to—" "On my station, I have whatever authority I say I have. Kron, if anyone tries to interrupt her, you have permission to use force." The Hissek's mouth curved into something that might have been a smile. "With pleasure, Commander." Dominique tuned them out. The new protocols were taking shape in the holographic display before her. Instead of genetic recognition, the system would evaluate requests based on multiple factors: legitimate need, ethical review, consensus from affected parties. No more automatic access. No more unlimited power for anyone. "Core," she said, "run a simulation. Show me what happens if I implement these changes." The holographic displays shifted, showing cascading effects across the galaxy. FTL gates would require proper authorization instead of responding to genetic markers. Planetary defense systems would need verified threats before activating. Terraforming networks would require environmental impact assessments. It was slower, more bureaucratic, infinitely safer. "Simulation complete," the core announced. "Implementation of proposed protocols will reduce unauthorized access attempts by 99.6%. However, emergency response times will increase by an average of 12 seconds. 12 seconds is acceptable," Dominique said. "Preventing another person like me from accidentally becoming a galactic threat is worth 12 seconds. "You're not a threat," Lix said quietly. "You could have used this power the moment you found it. You didn't. Only because I don't want it." Dominique finalized the last parameter and turned to face the assembled crowd. Delegates, security personnel, station command, all watching her with varying degrees of fear and fascination. But what about the next person? What if someone with these genetic markers actually wants to rule the galaxy? What if they don't care about ethics or consequences? Mox's light pulses had calmed slightly. You're dismantling your own authority." "I'm dismantling a stupid system that shouldn't exist." She turned back to the core. "Confirm implementation. Authorization. Inheritor genetic sequence." She paused, then added with a touch of bitter humor, "One last time." "Confirmed. Implementing new access protocols. This action is irreversible. Proceed?" Dominique looked at the holographic display one last time. All that power, all that potential, all the things she could do if she kept it, and all the reasons she shouldn't. "Proceed." The core pulsed with light, and Dominique felt something shift. Not in the room, but in herself. Like a connection being severed. The holographic displays flickered, reorganized themselves according to new parameters, and suddenly she wasn't the center of their attention anymore. She was just another person in the chamber. "Implementation complete," the core announced. "All progenitor systems have been updated with revised access protocols, genetic recognition disabled, new authorization requirements active." The chamber fell silent. Then Kron's scanner beeped. He pulled it out, pointed it at Dominique, and studied the readout. "Her clearance designation has changed. No more multi-level access. No more auto-granted authority. She's reading as Standard Level 2 maintenance personnel." "So it worked," Brix said. It worked. Dominique felt exhausted suddenly, like she'd run a marathon. I'm nobody again. Just a regular human who fixes things. Mox stepped forward, his light pulses confused. You gave up unlimited power. Voluntarily. Yeah. Why? Because I didn't earn it. Because it wasn't mine to keep. Because giving that much power to any one person, even me, is fundamentally wrong. She smiled tiredly. Also, because being hunted by every government in the galaxy sounded really annoying. Buckskill's antennae twitched. Might have been amusement. This is the most human thing I have ever witnessed. Given ultimate authority, and you immediately created oversight committees. Bureaucracy saves lives, Dominique said. Boring, frustrating, slow bureaucracy. Lix moved closer. Eye stalks focused on her with something like respect. What you did today, the delegates will still have questions. There will be investigations, paperwork, formal inquiries. But no dissection? No dissection, Brix confirmed. You're under my protection, remember? Anyone wants to bother you, they go through me first. Dominique nodded, grateful. They left the progenitor core chamber together, delegates muttering among themselves, security personnel still looking shell-shocked, station command trying to wrap their heads around what had just happened. The massive door sealed behind them with a soft hiss. Dominique made it 3 corridors before she had to stop and lean against a wall. You okay? Brix asked. Ask me tomorrow. She took a deep breath. Right now, I just want to go back to my quarters, sleep for 12 hours, and wake up to find this was all some really weird dream. I don't think that's likely. A girl can hope. She pushed off the wall and continued walking. The doors didn't open automatically anymore. She had to press the manual controls like everyone else. It felt wonderful. 3 days later, Dominique was back in Maintenance Wing Section 12, replacing the same air filter she'd abandoned when this whole mess started. Pollux walked past, saw her wrestling with a stubborn bolt, and paused. Need assistance? Yeah, actually. This thing's stuck. He helped her loosen it with one of his 4 hands, and they worked in comfortable silence for a few minutes. I heard what you did, Pollux said eventually, in the core chamber. Yeah? That was very brave. Or very foolish. Possibly both. Dominique smiled. Definitely both. The air filter finally came loose. She pulled it out, grimacing at the accumulated dust and debris. Some things never changed. Stations still needed maintenance. Filters still needed replacing. Life went on, though she'd kept one small secret. Before implementing the new protocols, she'd backed up the progenitor knowledge base to an encrypted file only she could access. Just in case. Just for emergencies. Just because sometimes humanity needed an ace up its sleeve. Opus's voice crackled through the comm system overhead. For the record, I knew you'd keep a backup. Very human of you. Practical paranoia. Shut up, Opus. Make me. Oh, wait, you can't anymore. Dominique laughed and got back to work.